Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you to the class today, science class. In this class, we're going to be talking about the nervous system. My name is Oladoyin Opeyemi. In this class, we would be able to define nervous system. We'll look at the sense organs and their uses, and then we finally look at the highs, the defects, and how these defects can be corrected. What is nervous system? A nervous system can be defined as the system that controls all the activities of the body, be it voluntary activity or involuntary activities. And this is done by certain organized cells called neurons or nerve cells. The nervous system can be grouped into two categories. We have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system made up of the brain and the spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system is made up of the nerves. But before we get into that, I said earlier that the nervous system controls all the activity of the body, but they do so through a reaction of the body. And there's something that prompts the body to react. That is called stimulus. So stimulus is anything that makes the body to react. And the reaction of the body to stimulus is what we call response. For instance, you step on a nail. That nail sends the pain into the body. The pain, you react to that pain. That reaction to the pain is what we call the response. So pain is one of the stimuli we have. Water can be stimulus, hunger can be stimulus, light can be stimulus, sound can be stimulus. For example, when there is sudden loud sound, your body reacts. You look towards where the sound is coming from. That is response. You respond to the change in the environment. So whatever that changes in that environment is called stimulus. And the stimulus can be within our body or outside the body. We should be aware of that. Now going to the, the nervous system classification. I said we have two classes. We have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. This is the brain, this is the spinal cord. Then the whole body is surrounded by nerve cells. The nerve cells are grouped under peripheral nervous system. I also said earlier that we have actions that are controlled by the nervous system, may be voluntary or involuntary. When we say voluntary actions, you should be able to identify voluntary actions and be able to say what it means. Voluntary actions are actions that we can control, that we can decide to exhibit or not. For example, jumping, walking, dancing, eating, all these are voluntary actions. And these voluntary actions are controlled by the brain. There's a part of the brain that control voluntary action. Then we have the path through which voluntary action flows through. That we call reacting to stimuli. In coordination of activity, there are five stops. There are five I would like to use the word stop. There are 5 stops where impulse will get to before action will take place. For example, you you withdraw your hand from hot object. Maybe you are holding, um, maybe you, okay, let me use voluntary. Maybe you saw a ball on the pitch and you are passing by. You can decide to kick the ball or not to kick the ball. Now this is voluntary action. Now these are the steps. We have 5 points where the signal will get to before action will take place. Number one, we have the receptor. Receptor is from the eyes. Retina is the receptor on the eyes that helps you to see the ball. So when you saw the ball, the signal is now sent to the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron now pass the message to the central nervous system. The central nervous system is made of the brain and the spinal cord. But the process, since this action is voluntary, the part of the brain that processes it is the brain. Then the brain now passed the message that the ball should be kicked. So you, or it should not be, it is in two ways, that you can kick it or you may not kick it. So if you kick it, then the message that comes is to kick. If you don't kick it, that is involuntary. Okay, I don't want to kick it. You can still control it. Even the message comes, they can control it. That's why it is called voluntary action. You can control it. You can decide to kick or decide not to kick. So from the coordinator, well, from the central nervous system, which is the brain, message is sent to your leg through the motor neuron. So between the brain and the leg, there is a neuron called motor neuron. So it is through that wire that the message from the brain gets to your leg that, okay, kick it. Now in the leg, there's a muscle on the leg. The muscle will now, is that the muscle contracts or relax? These are the two things that happen. So at the point of effector, you have the muscle to relax or to contract. That's number one. Number two, is either secretion of hormone. Maybe an hormone is secreted to as a response. For example, like you are sweating. When you are sweating, that means hormone is secreted. You are at the point of danger and you are shivering, you are sweating. It's hormone that is secreting, not muscle relaxing or contracting the situation. So there are 5 stops I mentioned. We have the receptor, we have the sensory neurons, we have the central nervous system, we have the motor neuron, and we have the effector. These are the 5 stops. But if it's a reaction that is voluntary, under the CNS, it is the brain that coordinates the activity. But if the reaction is involuntary, under the CNS, it is relay neuron that we shall see in the nearest future. Before I leave this space, I want to look at this note. Different receptors are specialized to detect different types of stimuli, e.g., taste receptor on the tongue. We have sound receptors in the ear, light receptor cells in the eyes, which is the retina. So every part of the sense organ has a receptor that takes signal, impulse, and then sent to the CNS through the sensory neuron. Now I have an example here that is talking about the voluntary action. We have the light coming from the ball. The light coming from the ball, it enters the eyes. The retina in the eyes is the receptor, and then the message is passed to the CNS. The part of the CNS that works here is passed to the CNS through the sensory neuron, and the part of the CNS that works there is the brain. The brain now coordinates that the leg should kick the ball. So through the motor neuron. So in the leg, you have the effector that impulse is sent via the motor neuron to the leg muscle, which contracts, causing kicking motion. So this is how impulse travel under voluntary action. Now we have involuntary action. We should know that involuntary actions are actions that occur without our consciousness, without our willingness. You cannot control it. It happens. An example include digestion, heartbeat, sneezing, blinking, withdrawal of hand when it touches or handles a hot object. All these examples are voluntary and involuntary action and reflex action. Now, let's separate the reflex from involuntary. But before that, I mentioned something here. The reflex action is controlled by the spinal cord. The involuntary action is controlled by the peripheral nervous system. Now, what is the difference between reflex action and involuntary action? One great difference is the speed of occurrence. The reflex actions occur faster than involuntary action. That's number one difference. Number two difference is that the voluntary action, the reflex actions occur as defense to the body, like insects want to enter into your eyes and you blink your eyes, preventing insect from entering. That is reflex action. Like you walk and step on nail, you jack your leg suddenly, so that is reflex action. Are we good to go? When you are ironing your laundry, your clothes, and suddenly the metal part of the iron hit your hand, you reject your hand immediately. That is reflex action. All these actions that occur as defense to the body are called reflex action. But involuntary action, you don't have control over those actions. Then they happen automatically. Then we have the involuntary one that you don't also have control over them, but they happen just for the life to roll, to move normally. For example, digestion. Digestion is involuntary action. Heartbeat is involuntary action. Blood circulation is involuntary action. All these actions, you don't have control over them. They occur on daily basis. They occur naturally on their own. You cannot influence it. They are involuntary. But the speed with which they happen compared to reflex action is slower compared to reflex actions. But all of them can be grouped as actions that we don't have control over. So now have reflex arc. When we say reflex arc, so what is reflex arc? Reflex arc is the pathway through which messages causing reflex action flow through. Let me take it again. Reflex arc or reflex pathway is the pathway through which messages causing reflex action flows through, and it starts from stimulus to receptor to sensory neuron, relay neuron, motor neuron, reflector, effector, and response. Now, this flow chart you have here is showing reflex arc. It's not different from pathway for involuntary action. The difference is just that in the voluntary action, under the CNS, you have the brain. But in the reflex pathway, reflex arc, under the CNS, you have relay neuron. That's what the difference is. This relay neuron that is causing the major difference between reflex pathway and voluntary pathway. Now, on this chart, I want you to note that there are three types of neuron in the nervous system. Namely, can you mention those neuron? There are three of them. If you look at the flow chart, number one, sensory neuron. Number two, relay neuron. Number three, I have the motor neuron. These are three types of neuron that can have in reflex pathway. All right. And what I have here is just to tell you that we have, when the danger is detected by receptors, impulse is sent from receptor down to the sensory neuron. Through what? Okay, is sent to the CNS through sensory neuron, down to the sensory neuron to the CNS. Impulse is sent along relay neuron in the CNS and straight down to motor neuron to an effector. The effector produces a quick response to prevent or limit danger. Note this quickly. The response in the response is involuntary as it does not involve the conscious part of the brain. So I have more example here. You have stepping on nail. You have the pain. When you step on pain, the stimulus and the pain enter the receptor cell, and it goes straight. Look at it, it goes straight. This is what we call the sensory neuron, and it goes straight to the relay neuron. It goes straight to the CNS, the central nervous system. So when it gets to the central nervous system, in the yes, in the relay neuron, yes, the relay neuron is found in the CNS, right? And then it go to the motor neuron. Motor neuron now send, what does the relay says? Contraction of the muscle. So it now come to the muscle and you contract your knee. The muscle is contracted, and then you jack your leg away from the pin, which is causing the pain. So I have the summary of that here. You can go through that. This is another example on where you touch object, it gets to the receptor on the hand, it goes to the sensory neuron, to the relay neuron, the CNS, back to the motor neuron, and then the muscle contracts so that you can move your hand away from the hot object. So this is looking at the differences between reflex action and involuntary action. Don't forget I said earlier that reflex action is controlled by spinal cord, while the involuntary is controlled by the medulla oblongata part of the brain. Then we have the speed of, of occurrence. Reflex action happens faster than the involuntary action. Then reflex action occurs as a result of stimulus. Then involuntary is not caused by a specific stimulus. Examples of reflex actions include the blinking of the eyes, salivation, and for examples of involuntary, we have breathing of the heart and blood circulation. Here we have the sense organs. We should know that the sense organs work with the nervous system. The sense organs detect stimulus. They are in connection with the receptors. And then when they get the stimulus, they link it to the receptor, and the receptor now puts it to the motor, the sensory neuron that sends to the CNS, motor neuron, and the effector. So we have 5 sense organs: the skin, the eyes, the nose, and the tongue. And the sense organs are important because they detect changes in the environment and release it to our nervous system. Then we look at the function of the sense organ, like the eyes for seeing. It converts electrical impulse to images, and it provides tears to provide nutrient to cornea, preventing infection and healing damage to the eyes. We have the nose for detecting odors and for breathing. We have the skin for sensation of pain, pressure, temperature. Also serve as protection to the body from invaders. We have the ears for hearing and for balancing. We have the tongue for tasting, taste like sweet, salt, sour, bitter, and so on. Then we have the eyes. You should be able to draw the eyes and label it. That is one of the things you should be able to do. Question can ask you to draw and label. So these are major parts. There are more to it, but these are major parts that you should not forget, like the cornea. The cornea is a part that helps to focus light that enters to the eyes. We have the pupil, the black part of the eyes. We have the lens. The lens and the cornea work together. The lens focus light on the retina, and on the retina, that is where image is formed. You see any object because image is formed on your retina. Then we have the iris that helps to shape the pupil, and then we have the ciliary muscle that control the shape of the lens. and we have the vitreous humor, we have the sclera, we have the optical nerve. Optical nerve is the one that sends the image formed by retina to the brain for interpretation. And then we have the blood vessel. So we have blood in the eyes as well. Okay, so these are the part, the cornea, the eyes, the pupil, the lens, the retina. Then we have the optical nerve, sclera, conjunctiva, vitreous humor, and aqueous humor. So you should be able to draw and identify all these parts. Very, very important identifying all these parts, especially all these iris, cornea, pupil, lens, vitreous, sclera, optical nerve, retina, and also identify their functions. Now we have eyes defects. We're going to look about 5 eye defects. The first one is called long-sightedness. That is the ability of the eyes to see a far object but not being able to see a nearby object. And this can be corrected using convex lens or converging lens. Another one we have is the short-sightedness known as myopia. Myopia is the ability to see a close by object but not being able to see a distant object. This can be corrected using concave or diverging lens. We also have what we call astigmatism. That is the inability to see horizontal and vertical figures. This can be corrected using cylindrical lens. Now I want you to, the lesson I want to take from this aspect is to know the eye defects, know the meaning, and how each can be corrected. We still have in that class that will enable us to discuss at length each of these long-sightedness, where short-sightedness, where images are formed before the retina, after the retina, on the retina, and all of that. So we have what we call presbyopia. This is a decrease in the power of accommodation due to old age. The accommodation is the maximum, the widest range of view that you can have. So when this is reducing due to old age, that defect is called presbyopia, and this can be controlled using bifocal lens. And the last one is the color blindness. Color blindness is inability to differentiate between colors properly, and this can be caused due to lack of vitamin D, heredity, or venereal diseases. And as we speak, there is no correction for this eye defect for now. Now we have activity. These activities are meant for you to be done. I have one, using the labels below, state the other signals are passed along the nervous system. You arrange this in terms of which comes in the order from the first stop to the last stop in nervous system coordination. Another activity I have for you is to match these eye defects to their correcting lenses, like short-sightedness, which of the lenses can be used to correct it, long-sightedness, astigmatism, presbyopia. Just match, draw a straight line to match the eye defect and how it can be corrected. And then we have a question on eyes. Look at that. The human eye can form images of objects that are at different distances away from the eyes. Figure 1 is a diagram of the eyes. Label structures A, B, and C. What is structure A? What is structure B? What is structure C? You have to label them. And then name 2 structures that control the shape of the lens. Which of these is the lens? And which structures control the shape? You have to study this diagram and find it out yourself. And the last question I have here is, to form a clear image, the light rays entering the eyes must focus on one structure in the eyes. Name the structure. So on which structure images can be formed on in the eye. So you have that to do. Uh, you have these questions to answer as well. Answer these questions, mail me your response. I'll be glad to see your response. Thank you so much for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.